Hi, I'm Danielle Edwards with the Investing News Network. I'm here with Akerna CEO Jessica Billingsley. Hi, thanks so much for taking some time to talk with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, to start, could you tell me a little bit about Akerna and the work you're focused on?
Sure. So, Akerna creates the world's most transparent and accountable consumer packaged goods supply chain at global scale, focused on the cannabis industry. We invented the concept of seed to sale tracking, and we collect more data points along the cannabis supply chain than any other company. We've to date tracked more than $16 billion in legal cannabis sales, and we operate in 14 countries and 29 US states.
I also want to ask about your NASDAQ listing. It's pretty impressive feat, especially for an ancillary company. So I wanted to know if things changed for Akerna, if something maybe came up that you didn't expect.
Well, we're delighted to have been successful in being the first cannabis technology company to list on a major US exchange. And pretty sure I'm also the first female CEO of a cannabis company to list on a major US exchange. What it does is it gives us the platform to do a little bit of M&A within our space. So it gives us both the capital as well as the currency. We have the platform already built, and now we can accelerate our growth as well as pursue a little bit of strategic M&A and really position ourselves as the leading cannabis technology company globally.
And since you've been able to make it on to the NASDAQ, do you see a future for ancillary companies on senior listings?
There will be more, although I can tell you that the process was very involved and there's a very high bar and barrier to entry from a legality standpoint. And I think that to see much movement of that type, we'll need to see some type of change in the US federal state conflict.
I also wanted to ask because I noticed I was looking at the share prices for you guys, and I noticed that once you got the listing, things spiked pretty dramatically, and they've settled a little bit now. So, what's the growth plan for Akerna moving forward?
Well, I think that our spike that we experienced right after listing just had a lot to do with the public's appetite for something that was related to cannabis but was not necessarily a direct operator. So a lot of people are able to get comfortable with us as a SaaS company. And I think the way that investors should think about us is as an attractively valued SaaS company that happens to serve the cannabis industry, which is arguably the fastest growing industry in the world. It's already bigger than chocolates. It's already bigger than craft beer. It's already bigger than tomatoes. So I think the way to think about us is through that lens. And having a stock price in either direction poses challenges. If our stock price had stayed too lofty, it might have been more challenging for us to do some of the M&A that we have planned, for instance. So we're really looking forward to still executing on our strategy, and we're a 10-year-old company. We've got good business fundamentals and continuing to show that, and I think the market will react appropriately.
And I also wanted to ask, now that you mentioned movements within the industry, about your recent agreement with Isolocity and what that means for Akerna.
So a big part of our strategy with this listing, we're going to do some M&A. We're also going to be very focused on strategic partnerships, and our recent partnership with Isolocity is a great example of this, where we are able to, with this partnership, offer the first fully GMP compliant solution for cannabis businesses, which is a necessary requirement in order to be able to export cannabis. So that's not a concern for US cannabis businesses currently, although businesses that want to plan for the future want to ensure that they have a computer software program that will allow them to export. But for Canadian businesses, for our Colombian clients, there are already countries where this is important and where having that ability is a necessary check mark, and we're really pleased to be able to offer that to our clients.
And I want to just go back to something you mentioned about being the first female CEO of an ancillary company to make it to the Nasdaq, and just about sort of that dynamic, being a woman in the cannabis space.
Well, I think of it as a double-edged sword, two sides of the coin. On the one hand, there are far fewer of us. On the other hand, people usually remember me. So, got that going for me.
Definitely, definitely. So for Akerna, what are the goals moving forward in the near term and long term?
We are just so interested in what it means, what we do. We already provide the backbone to the industry. We enable regulation, we enable compliance, we enable taxation. This concept of what we invented was seed to sale tracking. If I were holding a cannabis gummy right now, I would be able to tell you the farm on which the cannabis was grown, which plants went into it, any additives that were added while they were being grown, when it was harvested, at what processing facility that cannabis extract was extracted and then infused into a product, when it went to retail, when it was sold, on what day, at what time, what location, to whom, and not for the batch, not for the lot, for the particular gummy. And if you think about the broader applications of that, what we call ag tech or technology for agriculture, gosh, it wasn't that long ago we had the romaine lettuce scare where none of us could eat romaine lettuce and nobody knew, and it took the FDA weeks to try to narrow down the source, and then not with 100% accuracy. If that were cannabis, we would know. And so our technology is applicable to anything we put on or in our bodies. And I personally would like that level of transparency for most of what I put in or on my body. And I think that consumers in general are beginning to demand that level of transparency and accountability. And I'm excited to do that in cannabis and eventually to also bring that to other industries as well.
Are there any current plans to focus on any industries, maybe in food or topicals?
Well, certainly we do that for cannabis and hemp topicals. So maybe the first, if you want to call it a crossover vertical, would be hemp CBD. We've got a vast and growing number of hemp CBD clients internationally. And I've already consulted for some other industries like the seafood industry and some different particular agricultural industries. We would consider doing something there, although there's a lot of growth in cannabis, and we do need to ensure that we continue to meet those needs.
Sorry, just trying to think of the question that I'd had in my mind. One second. This part is going to get cut out of the audio. I was going to ask about, right. So I have a question about data, because you mentioned that it's important to be able to track, to be able to narrow down just where something was processed and go all the way back through the supply chain. So can you talk a little bit about data in the cannabis industry and if there's any unique sort of categorizations or needs that it has?
So, data in cannabis is much like any other industry. It's important to know what questions to ask. And then we have a wealth of data now around who is using cannabis, for what reasons, where are the growth areas. The people are adopting, there are new consumers, if you want to call them new. Many are moving from an illicit market, but consumers and patients are entering the cannabis market, the legal cannabis market, for the first time at a rate of 9% a month. So there is a growing, and has been growing for many, many years and continues to grow at this fast growth rate, demand for an alternate experience or for the use of cannabis for health or wellness reasons. So tracking all of those pieces, all of those data points, and understanding what people are using, why they're using it, and being able to then feed that information back to producers and manufacturers and investors so they know what how to serve the consumers and patients with the products that are going to be most desired.
And just finally, I'd like to ask if there's anything else you'd like to mention about Akerna and your future plans.
Well, we're doing big things. We are hiring, and we are open for strategic partnerships. We already have 50, give or take, cannabis technology companies that connect to one of our technology platforms in some way and provide some additional piece of functionality. We are very interested in growing those relationships, growing those partnerships, and serving the industry better. And I suppose for specifically through an investor lens, consider that and how the growth of the industry is being driven, and think about us as that SaaS company that's attractively valued and arguably the fastest growing industry in the world.
Perfect. It's been really interesting. Thank you so much for taking some time to talk with me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.